The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess was released in North America on November 19, 2006. One of 9 exclusive launch titles for the Nintendo Wii, and one of 3 launch titles published by Nintendo. Twilight Princess was the big daddy of the Wii's launch titles. The big kahuna, the system seller. If you were going to buy the system to play only one game, it was this game. Except that an arguably superior version of Twilight Princess was released on the GameCube only 1 month later, but more on that in a bit. Twilight Princess was the 11th game in the critically acclaimed Legend of Zelda franchise, depending on how you want to count them. The Legend of Zelda series, which needs no introduction, began all the way back in 1986 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and has been a pillar of the video game industry ever since. Following the release of the melancholy, surreal, and experimental Majora's Mask, and the cheery, sunlit sailing adventure of the Wind Waker, Twilight Princess was something of a return to form for the series, doing away with most of the gimmicks except for that big one, and focusing on a more straightforward high fantasy adventure which looked and played a lot like fan favorites Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past. In particular, Twilight Princess's darker, more mature style seemed like a reaction to the Wind Waker's bright, cheery aesthetic. I was very excited by the darkening of the color palette, because Twilight Princess released right when I was in my "oh, bright colors are for babies. The Wind Waker is cartoony, so it's for babies" stage of my childhood emotional development, so I was particularly looking forward to Twilight Princess. And here we need to discuss Twilight Princess's development, because Twilight Princess was originally developed for the GameCube, meaning that it was not designed with the Wii's motion controls in mind. Originally meant to release in 2005, the game was pushed back a year so it could launch with the Nintendo Wii. History would eventually repeat itself when this exact developmental transition happened again in 2017 when Breath of the Wild, which had been developed for the Nintendo Wii U, was delayed for a year so it could launch instead with the Nintendo Switch. Don't be surprised if this scenario plays out again with Breath of the Wild sequel, which has recently been delayed a year without explanation, right as the Switch just so happens to be potentially nearing the end of its life cycle. What Twilight Princess's transition into a Wii launch title meant was that the game had to include motion controls, even though it hadn't been designed for them. All of the sword fighting would now be controlled by swinging the remote like a sword. That was really exciting when it was first announced, because the idea of sword battling by actually swinging your controller like a sword sounded like it would completely change how we interacted with The Legend of Zelda. In reality, because the game was transitioned into a Wii title very late in its development, the developers didn't have time to use motion controls in any meaningful way. Instead, they just substituted motion for a button press. In Twilight Princess, you do control the sword with the motion controls, but your motions do not correlate with Link's sword swings in any way. You can waggle the controller in any direction and at any speed, and Link will always perform the exact same series of swings in the exact same way. So, the motion controls turned out to be sort of awkward and pointless, and might as well have just been left as a button press. This is why the GameCube version is arguably superior, since it doesn't waste time with pointless motion controls. These are the worst kind of motion controls, when developers just force motion controls where they don't belong and where they don't enhance the player's experience in any way, and even worse, actually get in the player's way and make the game less enjoyable. With that said, using the Wii controller's infrared pointer to control the bow and arrow feels far more fast and fluid than the somewhat clumsy dual stick controls on the GameCube's gamepad. so some improvements were made, and an argument could be made that the Wii version is the superior one. There's one other strange thing that has to be mentioned about this game's transition into a Wii launch title. Link, the playable character, is left-handed. He has always been left-handed. He wields his sword in his left hand. However, most players are right-handed, and the Wii Remote is designed to be held in your dominant hand. This created a situation where players would swing their controller in their right hand, and the character they controlled would swing his sword in his left hand, which was awkward. But the switch from GameCube to Wii development was made so late that the developers didn't have time to alter Link's model or animations. So their solution instead was to mirror the entire game. They flipped the entire game backwards. Every single map, every single object, including Link's model, were flipped backwards. And the result was that he was now swinging his sword in his right hand, which is kind of completely insane. Now, even with some awkward shoehorned motion controls, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is one of the greatest games ever made, and I'll tell you why. I love this game. I love this game more than I love several of my immediate family members. That's right, I just used the word several, meaning more than 2 or 3. I'm not just talking about my weird uncle here. I'm saying I would rather spend time playing this game than spend time with several of the human beings I've known since birth. And I'm not joking. I am deadly serious. That's not even necessarily a dig at my immediate family, so much as a statement of how good this game really is. I love this goat herding minigame. I love this guy's creepy tongue helmet. I love this stupid sumo wrestling match that you have to win in order to gain the respect of the Goron tribe, in which you can only win by literally cheating. I love this gravity mechanic that lets you put metal boots on and very slowly stomp up walls. I love this boss fight where you and the Bulblin King line up on either side of this bridge and charge straight at each other, swords raised. And when you emerge victorious, Link does this awesome slow motion pose reared up on his horse. And holy crap on a crapstick, he looks so cool. I love this snooty store in Castle Town that won't even let you in because your shoes are too dirty. So you get your shoes shined by the shoe shine boy, and then you can get in, but everything in stock is exorbitantly priced. So you engage in an aggressive financial hostile takeover and force the snooty shop proprietor to spend the rest of his days doing a silly dance and singing a song behind the counter, no matter how dirty your shoes are, and you'd better bet that they are dirty. I love this side quest where the Zora Princess's dead mother's ghost tasks you with cheering up her son so he can reward you with swimming trunks. I love this other side quest where you have to get the Zora Princess help to catch a stinky fish so you can follow its stinky trail through a blizzard and up the side of this snowy mountain and find this Yeti man at the summit who lives in a frozen, crumbling manor on the side of a cliff, where you help him find ingredients to make a soup for his sick Yeti wife. And once she's eaten the soup and feels better, you whack her in the face with a ball and chain a few times, because she doesn't show you proper gratitude. And then her Yeti husband runs in and they have this genuinely beautiful, heartfelt moment together. And then afterwards you can go snowboarding with them. And come on, this game is awesome. I think the easiest way to properly express my boundless, gushing, overwhelming love for Twilight Princess is to simply go through it from start to finish and point out everything that makes it great. In Twilight Princess, you begin the game in the quiet village of Ordon, where Link works as a goat herder. You spend the first couple hours of the game in this village, herding goats, playing with the village children, and helping the villagers with their problems. This opening section has been criticized for being too slow and long, and I completely disagree. I've always loved this peaceful, slow-paced opening to the grand adventure, and it reminds me a lot of the Shire sections of Lord of the Rings. Ordon Village puts the rest of the adventure into perspective. Link isn't just some faceless, emotionless warrior fighting for the heck of it. He's an inexperienced village boy, in over his head, fighting for his home, fighting for his family, and to get back the peaceful life he's lost. All of which the player now has intimate experience with. That peaceful village life is shattered when monsters attack the village, kidnap the children, and knock Link unconscious. When he chases after them, he is pulled into a weird, dusk-lit netherworld, where he transforms into a wolf, passes out, and then wakes up chained in a dungeon. Now let me just say, holy crap. The Legend of Zelda series is sometimes criticized for being pretty light on story. But right here, the game has instantly created stakes, motivations, and mysteries. And those mysteries are fascinating. It's genuinely excellent narrative plotting. And let's just say here, I loved this wolf transformation as a kid because I thought wolves were really cool. And I still do, because they are. Link, now a wolf, is rescued from his imprisonment by Midna, a strange, unsympathetic, impish creature who is very openly manipulating Link to achieve her own mysterious goals. Link journeys from the castle dungeons up to the very top of one of the castle's towers, where he meets the titular Princess Zelda, who explains the situation. The unstoppable King of Twilight, Zant, the guy wearing the creepy tongue mask, has invaded from another dimension, conquered the kingdom, and veiled the entire land in a curtain of unending twilight, where the people live as shades in a melancholy eternal torment. Awesome. Awesome. This game is so freaking cool. I mean, come on. Link is tasked with journeying into the lands shrouded by twilight, doing battle with the shadow creatures he finds there, and dispelling the twilight to restore peace to the kingdom. The sections of the game where you explore the lands consumed by twilight are some of my favorite parts of the game. The Twilight areas feel so surreal and strange and alien and dangerous that I just could not get enough of them. Plus, in these sections you get to play as the wolf, and as previously stated, wolves are cool. After dispelling the Twilight, Midna tasks you with finding lost temples to recover pieces of a shattered ancient weapon, which she plans to use to do something. Each of the temples you explore are unique, creative, and tightly designed. They follow the same broad themes of dungeons from previous Zelda games, particularly Ocarina of Time's forest, fire, and water temples, but still feel distinctly different. Like in the new forest temple where you rescue monkeys so they can help you cross large gaps, or the fire temple where you use the power of magnetism to walk on walls, or the water temple where you redirect the flow of water using a confusing spinning central staircase. After you collect all of the pieces of her ancient super weapon, Midna prepares to face off against the evil King of Twilight, and then immediately gets her butt cheeks clapped so hard her body literally shifts dimensions. Evil King Zant appears so powerful here, he just tosses this water dragon aside like it's nothing. He's actually kind of really scary. In this scene, he becomes one of the most imposing villains in the entire Legend of Zelda series. Then you go on a quest through a rain-soaked Hyrule Kingdom to save Midna's life while this absolutely gorgeous music plays. I mean, just listen to this. From there, your goal is to collect pieces of a portal into another dimension, so you can defeat King Zant on his home turf. And as good as everything leading up to this has been, from here on out, somehow the game just gets even better. From this point on, the entire kingdom of Hyrule is open to you to explore, following new leads returning to old characters searching for a way into the Twilight Realm, while galloping on horseback and listening to this triumphant orchestra music. Every step of your adventure is accompanied by a new, long, convoluted, quirky, and delightful overworld quest, like the aforementioned Stinky Fish quest, to meet the Yeti on the mountain, which leads to a dungeon like the aforementioned Yeti Soup Mansion. In addition to the Yeti Mountain, you also travel to an ancient, abandoned prison buried in the sands of a desert, where the tortured souls of the imprisoned still roam the cells. You journey back in time to a vastly larger and more complicated trap-filled version, of Ocarina of Time's Temple of Time, and finally up into a city in the clouds, where these weird bird creatures with human heads live. And how the heck did they build this city when they don't even have hands? With the portal complete, you're finally able to travel across dimensions into the Twilight Realm, which is one of the most beautiful and eerie locations in any Zelda game. You defeat Zant there, who somewhat disappointingly turns out to be nothing but a maniacal, half-crazed, jealous stooge of Ganondorf, though his boss fight is still really cool. And finally, Midna uses her ancient super weapon to blast through the barrier protecting Hyrule Castle, which you must storm to face the ancient evil King Ganondorf, in a final battle which will decide the very fate of the Kingdom of Hyrule. Every single part of Twilight Princess feels epic, adventurous, and exciting, while simultaneously feeling quirky and weird and silly. It has so much personality and charm, and everything is so expertly crafted. This adventure is absolutely massive, and every inch of it is intricately designed. With that all said, the game does have two fairly serious flaws that have to be mentioned in any review. Firstly, is that this game is easy. This game is stupid easy, meaning it's so easy that even a stupid person could beat it. Every fight in this game is pitiful. This water dragon fight is spectacular and cinematic and cool, but also look at this, it just swims around in circles. It will never attack you. You could just sit in a corner and clip your toenails, and it would never touch you. You can walk through any enemy in this game as easily as a toddler could walk through a wall made out of wet tissue paper. It's pathetic. The second problem is that the world feels almost completely dead. Look at this. This is Castle Town. It's full of people and noise and crowds and life. But when you walk outside the door, then bam, suddenly there is nothing. There is not a single human soul out here. Not even any animals. Not a bird, not a squirrel. Twilight Princess's version of Hyrule Kingdom feels lifeless and static. And it really sucks a lot of the fun and excitement out of the adventure when you're doing all of your adventuring in a seemingly barren wasteland. But those are only two problems in an otherwise perfect experience, and I can easily say without exaggeration that The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is one of the greatest games ever made. It is one of the best pure adventure games you can find anywhere in gaming. A world full of secrets, lost treasures, and ancient temples. A world that feels massive, without any pointless filler or repetitive pointless side quests. That pays homage to past games while always doing something new. That is simultaneously melancholy and frightening while still being goofy and delightful. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is awesome. A second Zelda game would be released for the Nintendo Wii 5 years later in the distant future year of 2011. The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword would be designed around the system's by then updated motion controls, and remains one of the few games that truly demonstrated just how much motion controls could enhance a video game. I will review Skyward Sword someday, probably many years from now, because I am going to review every game ever released for the Nintendo Wii or die trying. Oh yeah. Woo! Wee! Woo!